So in practice, what WTO Brexit will mean is that the obligations on the EU and the United Kingdom vis-a-vis one another will be to treat trade flows between them in the same way that they treat the member, the WTO member, with whom they have no free trade agreements, no trade-related agreements of any kind. There aren't many of those, so the closest analog is Venezuela. So I think if you have a package, if you picture a package now that is heading from Edinburgh to Paris, that receives a very advanced degree of treatment. If you are a Venezuelan exporter trying to send a goods consignment to Paris, you find yourself facing much higher fees, much greater degrees of paperwork. And the EU is in a way, under WTO rules, under a principle called most favored nation status, has to apply those Venezuelan rules to the United Kingdom. Now that's an oversimplification, but that's essentially what it means. For UK businesses, even with all of the commendable measures that the governments on both sides have already put in place to mitigate against that shock, it's likely to be a very sharp shock indeed in two ways. First, there's the question of tariffs. The UK has indicated it will liberalize a range of tariffs on a most favored nation basis to allow imports to flow in more readily than they otherwise would. The EU has made no such indication, no such implication, as far as I'm aware. So if there is no deal, the UK will absolutely face those tariffs. Anyone suggesting otherwise under unicorn schemes like Article 24 of GATT or mysterious last-minute arrangements is doing so without any basis on EU statements or kind of indications. So they will face tariffs. That's the first shock. The second shock is just in terms of paperwork and procedures. The EU Single Market and Customs Union has done its very, very best to make moving something from Glasgow to Paris as easy as moving it from Glasgow to Edinburgh in terms of paperwork and requirements. They haven't quite gotten all the way there, but they've gotten far closer than almost anyone else anywhere in human history. Compared to that, moving something internationally is actually a significant burden of paperwork. There is a reason that the customs brokerage industry exists. There is a reason that freight forwarders are a thing. And that is because navigating the bureaucracy of international trade, which every single country has, is a really hard lift. And any business in the United Kingdom or in Scotland that has only ever traded within the European Union will have never encountered that before. There's the EORI numbers, the basically registering as an exporter. If you have never traded as a business outside of the EU, chances are you don't even have that registration. You're not registered as an exporter because you didn't have to be. And EORI registration numbers, which are being tracked, are still, I think, hundreds of thousands below where they need to be. So tens and tens of thousands of UK businesses will not be eligible to export. They will not be the type of registered firm that can export goods to markets they could easily export to the previous day because the paperwork requirements will just kick in. And even if that's mitigated in part on the UK import side, and I trust the European Commission will also do what it can to mitigate that. In the long term, in addition to the shock, there is also every additional bit of paperwork costs money, and every additional paperwork costs time. And business models in the UK right now, the ones exporting to the EU, are built around not having to do that. If they do have to do that, that raises their cost of doing business and may push them outside of their competitiveness margins. So it's, I don't want to overstate this, but I actually really struggle to overstate it at the same time. This is a really, really serious and sharp shock that should not be dismissed.
Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more trade explainers or in some trade policy or negotiations training for your organization, please check out my website, ExplainTrade.com. I also tweet at Dmitry Opines. Until next time, everyone.